continuing with our discussion on understanding customers and segmentation, targeting and positioning. But as I mentioned in the previous session, we will discuss now some particular applications and concepts with respect to STP in the context of business to business or industrial marketing. So, there are some companies quite we discussed in case of the paint industry, for example. So, when we take somebody like Asian Paints or Kansai Nerolac, they are marketing to both consumers as well as to the industry. The industrial paint forming 30% of the market and the decorative paint forming 70% of the market. But you will see that in case of decorative paint, the marketing activity will address or should address an individual buyer like you or me for some repainting job at home, but a major business in the decorative paint will happen also through contractors, builders and through influencers like architects. But today we are going to discuss not that mixed sort of marketing strategy where we have retail buyers as well as institutional or business buyers. We are looking at primarily business to business market. So, companies like say Larsen & Toubro's construction machinery division or the heavy equipment division of Larsen & Toubro or Ingersoll Rand, they are primarily or almost entirely their marketing is to other businesses or to institutions. And we are going to focus in this session on the buyer behavior as well as the segmentation, targeting and positioning issues for this type of market. So, primarily one division is this commercial market. This commercial market and may relate to say for example, a builder will be buying paint for further usage in the final delivery of an apartment or a villa to a consumer, and paint will be used within that. So, paint is a component. We will discuss this in a little bit more detail just now. And there are of course institutional buyers, the government itself is a big buyer, and then there are trade buyers, meaning retailers or wholesalers who would be buying some industrial products. So, in this also there are distributors, wholesalers, retailers, different categories. Also interestingly, even though we know about the e-commerce, whenever we talk about, we think in terms of Amazon or eBay or Flipkart, but 94% and today it may be even higher of internet business happens in the B2B domain, because this is one business segment that has been highly that has created a barrier free environment, so that people from all over the world can now trade. So, when it comes to segmentation in the consumer market, we look at segmentation techniques like demographic or psychographic. Demographic means based on age and other factors. And we looked at psychographic and other segmentation, but here we actually do the segmentation based more on the nature of the customer. One of the ways of understanding that nature is to look at this industry classification. Every country has, and in some cases even internationally, we have various industry classifications like petrochemical or automotive or chemical or pulp and paper. These are very well accepted descriptions for certain types of industries accepted all over the world. So, this is obviously, so pulp and paper by itself becomes a market segment. So, if you are making machineries for coating of paper, for creating writing printing paper, or if you are actually making machines for what we call cutters, then your primary market segment will be pulp and paper. So, this is a way we segment. Segmentation can also be done by end use application, and so for example, the end use is for automotive. So, we were discussing about paint, and we found that the industrial paint which forms about 30% of the total market, within that 60% is for automotive industry, and we said 40% is for consumer durables like washing machines or refrigerators or dishwashers and so on, and marine applications. So, you see this is a by end use we are doing segmentation, and segmentation is also done by purchase category. We will discuss that in a little bit more depth, the purchase cycle. Now, here I must introduce to you another very important segmentation technique, and that is called the classification of the goods. So, first category is what we call entering goods. Entering goods means that if we take a business, one can develop this famous IOO model. That means, there are various inputs. So, if you are, and this is the operations and this is the output, and there are of course, you often look at a feedback loop. So, entering goods, if you take say for example, an automotive factory, the entering goods will be paint will be an entering good. The automotive factory might be buying the complete steering assembly or the tires or maybe the crankshaft from other manufacturers. So, paint is like almost a raw material. If they are buying seat belts or a complete seat, then they are buying components or sub assemblies. The steering set is a sub assembly, and all of these, that means raw material, components, sub assemblies, all these are, they come under entering goods, meaning these are stuff that come into the plant for further processing for incorporation in the final product. So, paint, the seat belt, the steering assembly, all of they get incorporated into the final delivery item, which is the car. So, entering goods can be process input in the form of raw material, component or subsystem. or subassembly. The entering goods are also of another type, what we call MRO, or maintenance, repair and operational spares or accessories. In the MRO category will be items like say cooling fluid, which will be used on machines that will be used to manufacture various automotive parts in the automotive plant. MRO may include even items like electric bulbs or CFL lamps or conveyor belt, which are all used for replacement in the existing setup as machines wear and tear, and then there are replacements. So, these are called generally classified as MRO. Even buying a printer paper will come under MRO, but they are also often actually classified under another category called facilitating. So, buying of a printer or a printer cartridge or the printer paper in an automotive plant will be something that is a mix of MRO and facilitating goods. Facilitating goods are those which do not directly participate in the production process, do not get incorporated in the final delivery item or equipment, but they are needed for proper functioning of the production process. So, like chairs, tables, printers, computers, which are office computers, not the computers installed on production machines. So, these are facilitating goods. As I said, they facilitate the production process, but do not directly participate as raw material, component or subassembly in the production process. And the third category are what we call capital goods. These are the machines or other infrastructural equipment needed for the production process. So, three major distinctions, classifications: the entering goods, which can be raw material, components and subassemblies. Second will be the facilitating goods, and an in between class of MROs, which can be part of the almost part of the processing system or facilitating system. And lastly, the capital purchase of machines and infrastructure. As you can see here, that this automatically leads to one kind of segmentation based on frequency of purchase, because entering goods are needed daily in a production plant. So, if you are producing every day X number of cars, then you will need X number of steering assemblies. So, these are therefore the frequency of purchase is daily, but as we will see that does not mean every day there is a negotiation. These are contracts that are placed maybe for a year, or it might be contracted that a particular model of a car will have the steering assemblies coming from supplier X and supplier Y in 50-50 proportion and so on. So, it may be a long term contract as well, but the purchase, the acquisition process and utilization process may be happening daily. Whereas, there is MROs, which can be replacement CFL, or can be replacement for printer cartridge, or replacement for broken chairs and tables. These happen periodically, they do not happen every day, they happen either triggered by a need, that means something that is not functioning, or they may happen on a regular basis every month, every quarter and so on based on consumption. And capital purchase happens maybe once in 2 years, once in 5 years, once in 1 year and so on. Whatever may be the purchase frequency, whether daily or once in 3 years, industrial buying or the purchase decision process, even though it may involve this same sequence, that means need recognition, information search, evaluation of alternatives and purchase, it will often involve a group decision making process and a formal decision making process, a documented decision making process. So, when a need is recognized that we need to replace 200 chairs which are not functional in an organization like say IIT Kanpur, it is an institutional buying situation. So, the need is recognized, but whether we will buy those chairs from supplier A or supplier B or supplier C, or we will get it made by our workshop, which these days do not happen, used to happen once. This decision whether we will go to supplier A, B or C may involve the indenter, that means the departments concerned, may involve our stores and purchase department. Depending on the volume of purchase, it may even involve some of our top administrators like the deputy director or some dean and so on. So, it involves multiple decision makers when we are doing both information search and evaluation. So, multiple decision makers. It is a formal process, it will be documented, and we often will invite quotations. So, there will be bidding and negotiation. So, 3 important things. In a tacit manner, it happens in even consumer purchase of high value. So, if you are buying a car for your family or a new washing machine, there will be multiple decision makers even in that case. You may be involved, your spouse will be involved, sometimes your children may be involved. It may not be documented, but this information search may involve getting quotations from various shops, may involve some search on the internet and so on. But in case of a purchase in an organization like Larsen Toubro or an organization like IIT Kanpur, the purchase decision will have to have some formal records involving opinions from multiple decision makers and will involve bidding and negotiation. The buyer seller relationship here has a much higher emphasis on this relationship marketing. If you are buying soap, then once the purchase has taken place in the past, even in soap today, this post purchase assessment of customer satisfaction, assessment of customer delight in consumer goods. We did not pay much attention to this before, but as I discussed in an earlier session, one of the key component of marketing strategy today has become relationship marketing because of the huge expansion of market dimensions in terms of competitors, global competitors, fragmentation of customer attention, multiple media clamoring for customers' attention. All that has made the acquisition of a new customer very expensive. So, even when you are actually today in a consumer goods business like soap or toothpaste, or definitely if you are in the business of consumer durables like refrigerators or washing machines, you do pay a lot of attention these days to post purchase and what we call relationship building based on post sales processes. In industrial marketing, however, this is of paramount importance, because in industrial markets, bad performance with one customer will not only put in jeopardy a long cycle that you would have followed involving discussions with multiple decision makers, bidding and negotiation, all that may be nullified by a bad post purchase customer support process. So, relationship marketing is a key component where again STP or segmentation, targeting, positioning are important objectives as well as inputs. The other STP issues in industrial marketing is that the demand in industrial market, business to business market, is often called derived demand. So, if the automotive business is going up, then the steering column business or steering assembly business will be going up. Brake lining or automotive tire companies will do better when the automotive industry, that means the what we call the OEM, the original equipment manufacturer, where these companies are suppliers, when the OEM business is going up. So, that is derived demand. And as you can see, because it is derived demand, we often say that the success in the B2B market depends on your attention to your customer's success, because only if your customer is successful, if your customer's business is growing, then only your business will grow. Obviously, if the automotive business is flat, then if you are manufacturing body parts for cars, or if you are buying manufacturing window closers or door locks for trucks, and the truck business is flat, then your business will be flat. So, we often say therefore, one part of the relationship marketing is a keen focus on making your customer successful, customer's business with their customers more successful by making your products better in both at the time of assembly and in the post purchase operation. Because it is derived demand, sometimes in certain industries it can lead to volatility. So, demand for petrol pumps or gasoline, of course, it seldom happens, will be going down if the demand for automotive equipment goes down. To some extent, there is against this volatility, there is a mitigating factor that the demand is often, because the demand is always there when the customer business is growing. So, the strategy here may be less sensitive to pricing, because prices are often pre-negotiated, and the risks are shared between the OEM and the supplier. And some of the other issues like inventory management, etc., are different in this case, and therefore, because many times your ultimate buyer, so a company like Maruti or a company like Tata Motors or a company like Ashok Leyland, they will be insisting with their main suppliers that to maintain the flow, they must get the right part at the right time. So, many cases actually the information systems of the OEM and the tier 1 suppliers are integrated. So, what Maruti will produce 15 days later, that production schedule will be shared by Maruti with their tier 1 suppliers. So, Sona Koyo Steering will know in advance that what are the models that will be coming up 15 days later on Maruti's assembly line, and they will prepare their system accordingly, so that those steering assemblies are available at Maruti's doorstep just a day before or just on the day of the start of that production schedule. And this just in time inventory capability to deliver it, all these are interesting issues when you look at your STP and your marketing strategy. In this market, a part of the negotiation, this bidding and negotiation process we talked about, happens sometime internally. That means, when this need is recognized and options are evaluated, some of these may be make versus buy decision. Like there was a time when in Tata Motors, almost 80% of the stuff that they used in their trucks were made internally within their own plants. But as the market matures, as more good suppliers become available, and due to various other reasons, many of the components today are purchased, sub-assemblies are purchased by Tata Motors from outside. But at every stage they shifted from making their own to buy from outside. They would have done sufficient evaluation, the economics, the convenience, all of those factors would have come, and a formal process would have. So this negotiation and economic evaluation happens inside the organization and later on with their suppliers. Many companies actually purchase all of the goods they need in the B2B mode, but they go to market in the B2C mode. So, for example, Nike, one of the top shoe brands across the world hardly own any manufacturing facility. They almost entirely outsource their products from captive suppliers and from manufacturers who brand the product for them. Nike just, so therefore, Nike's supply system is based on B2B, but they go to market in the B2C mode. And then of course, there is another market of leasing, often used for capital goods. We will discuss it just now, but depending on what kind of goods you are looking at, whether it is entering goods, whether it is facilitating good, or whether it is you are marketing capital goods, there will be various levels of influences, a number of influencers in the purchase process. Those interpersonal issues, psychographic issues that we discussed in consumer behavior to an extent will apply here, but understanding of group behavior will be more important here. And those behavior patterns will change according to these different buying situations. We have here three major situations. One is called the straight rebuy. Straight rebuy means that it is you continue to buy every day, every week, every month, almost in an automatic process based on long term contracts or based on standards, without every time going through a set of negotiation or going through this process. So, this is done once. So, if Tata Motors will be now buying paint, the new metallic shiny paint for their new models, then they will have an initial information search, evaluation of alternatives, but if they have decided to purchase now 70% of their requirement from Kansai Nerolac, all I am taking hypothetical examples, and 30% from another supplier, both committing to supply to the same standard, both committing to supply on just in time basis as we discussed. That means every day they will be supplying a certain mix of paints based on the production schedule, or they may be supplying every week. And this is a situation where it is a straight rebuy. The straight rebuy also applies to the MRO situation, maintenance, repair, or operational items. So, if you are buying a printer cartridge, then it is preordained that if it is printer manufactured by company X, then you will be buying cartridge from that company, or they are nominated component suppliers. So, these are the two types of situations of straight rebuy. So, straight rebuy, recurring purchases in which a customer reorders a product that has satisfied the needs in the past or that has been agreed to, and even this reorder process may be almost automatic. In fact, it may not involve these days. So, one ERP system can order it on another ERP system almost automatically, machine to machine, based on some predetermined frequency and rate negotiation. As opposed to straight rebuy, the modified rebuy is not an entirely new purchase process, but it may involve periodic reassessment. So, today for the next 12 months, Tata Motors or Maruti buying their paint requirements from supplier A and supplier B in certain proportion will operate as a straight rebuy process. But after 12 months, particularly if it is an industry where technology is changing, new suppliers are coming in, price levels are subject to more competitive pressure, there may be periodic renegotiation. And therefore, purchasers are re-evaluating available options time to time. It also happens in some very standardized products, like for example, if you are doing some MRO type of purchase of say contactors or electrical relays, or you are buying electrical motors, then because of the high standardization in such industries, it is possible to replace product from company A with the product from company B, because almost all the fixing dimensions and installation parameters are highly standardized. So, in this case, if there is a requirement, or if there is a requirement of chairs and tables, then periodically for a particular year there may be a what we call a rate contract, but these rate contracts are renegotiated time to time depending on changes in technology, changes in price level, changes in number of suppliers, changes in approaches made by new suppliers, or changes in the conditions of the existing suppliers, because some of them may be going through a merger acquisition, some of them may be going out of business, or maybe deciding to get out of a particular type of business. And for all these situations, therefore, there will be a re-evaluation of available options, and this is what we call a modified rebuy situation. So, this happens more regularly. Once the process is set, then further buying decisions may be taken at a lower level. It may be a routine decision taken by the materials department, the purchase manager. But when it comes to modified rebuy, this re-evaluation of available options, because it involves new information search and new set of evaluation of alternatives, again the number of people involved in making that decision will go up. In case of capital goods purchase, new capital expenditure, we are looking at a first time purchase or a unique purchase. So, you are buying a new milling machine or a new set of paint robos for your paint shop, or you are setting up a new assembly line for the new plant of Maruti in Manesar. In all of these cases, it is a major investment and will definitely involve a longer setup process in this information gathering as well as in evaluation of alternatives, bidding, rebidding, negotiation, discussion on technical features. There will be trade offs, because a company A may offer one feature which is significantly better, another company may have another set of features which are better placed. So, this is a process, this new capital expenditure, where the marketers are usually focusing on a differentiation based marketing strategy, and the buyer may be actually promoting to locate such differentials which will give them ultimately some advantage in their production process, because capital expenditure usually means these are production machines and systems. So, the buyer is also looking for additional benefits and therefore, may actually widen their search and go beyond the current supplier base. The process that is involved in such buying decision, that is a new buy as we call it, or modified rebuy, involves a higher degree of group decision making, and we will just now look at the roles played by different people in that group buying process, on which again in your strategy you will have to consider the segmentation, targeting, positioning, taking those inputs into your scheme of things. But one interesting situation that is emerging more and more is called reciprocity. This is actually a process of buying from suppliers who are also your customers and sometimes even competitors. For example, we know that Apple and Samsung fight fiercely, compete fiercely in the marketplace for smartphone offerings, but Samsung may also be a supplier for certain components to Apple. In fact, in the semiconductor industry or the electronic industry, it often becomes very difficult to identify a company who is only a competitor or only a supplier. The roles are often very overlapping. It happens due to technology convergence. But however, the group buying process, as we were talking about, applicable to this both modified rebuy and the new capital expenditure process, the new buy, modified rebuy, involves a group buying process and these are the different roles that are played by different departments, individuals who constitute this buying center. Take for example, the case of paint buying for say refrigerator manufacturer. Refrigerators used to always have white paint. In fact, they were classified under what we used to call white goods. But nowadays, refrigerators are available in multiple colors. People are looking at new color alternatives for better corrosion resistance, or sometimes for better decorative placement within a room. People are looking for refrigerators whose colors match the color of the wall and so on. So, what used to be a straight rebuy of white paint has now become a modified rebuy decision, because depending on season, changing customer preferences, depending on the consumer market changes, the paint suppliers marketing to a refrigerator manufacturer will be going through a process where all of these people may be involved. So, the decider in this case, sometimes also called the indenter or need generator, may be the marketing department of the refrigerator manufacturer working with the design department. Finally, whether the supplier A supplier A or supplier B or an offering of A1 from A and B1, B2, B3, 3 varieties from B. So, this may be the traditional white paint with new metallic shine, and this may be a new red and maroon option or a green option or a blue option coming from these two suppliers. Finally, this decision will be taken by the decider and the user. So, the decider, as I said, may be the marketing department of the refrigerator company and the design department. The user in this case will be the manufacturing department. So, the paint may be looking very good, but if it is not suitable in the current manufacturing process, if its viscosity is not amenable to the production machinery of the refrigerator manufacturer, then the manufacturing department will object. So, the decision will need support from the decider as well as from the user. In the initial phase, the role of the decider will be more important. Once the decision has been made, the role of the user becomes more dominant. At that stage, the buyer, which may be just the purchase department. So, the buyer and the user, they become the dominant player in once the decision has been made. But before the decision has been made, when it is in this information search and evaluation phase, there may be a bigger role being played by the decider and the influencer. The influencer may be a consultant. a marketing consultant or a design consultant. It could even be somebody from the top management of the refrigerator company. And of course, there is always another role, the role of the gatekeeper. This role is often played by the finance department. This role could also be played by some key managers in the top team. So, as you see here, there are different roles like decider, buyer, user, gatekeeper, influencer, all constitute what we call the buying center. The importance of these roles in the buying process change over time. In the early phase of a new buy situation, new capital expenditure buying, in the early phase, the deciders and the users, possibly the buyers, will play the key part. At a later stage, the gatekeepers will come into play, and influencers may have a big role as a consultant or specification framer or technology advisor. The influencer may have a very big role in the initial phase and could be even in the later phase. So, this number of roles, they are changing importance that constitute the buying center, creates new challenges for institutional markets and the segmentation, targeting and positioning. So, when you are targeting the refrigerator manufacturer to market your new metallic shine paint, but your positioning or your value bundling for the gatekeeper will have dimensions which may not be exactly same as the value bundle that you will project to the decider or to the user. So, price will become an important issue, the terms of payment will become an important issue, the delivery schedule, logistic matching, all these will become important issues at the later stage of the purchase cycle, whereas technical specification, the current performance record will become important issues in your positioning in the early phase of the purchase. Of course, these, when it comes to international markets, will involve other issues like cultural issues, buyers' attitude issues, and so on. So, to conclude, industrial buyers to a large extent follow the same sort of purchase process, but because of the many other issues that we discussed today, like straight rebuy, modified rebuy, new buy, or because of the involvement of the purchase center or buying center, multiple decision makers, your STP strategy should take into consideration group behavior and frequency aspects to create success of your marketing strategy. Thanks.